This story is so cliché and ridiculous that no one ever believes it's real except for the people who were there. It was Halloween 2012, my senior year of high school. I went to a Catholic school, so we always had off the day after Halloween, because it's considered a church holy day. So my friends were game to start our weekend early. On nights when we didn't go to parties, we usually do the same thing. We'd sit on my front steps for a couple of hours and joke around. Then we would walk the neighborhood and usually end up at this shitty pizza place across town because the prices were so cheap. Since a few of us had recently broken up with our girlfriends, we weren't in much of a party mood, so we did our usual. It's around 10:30 p.m. and the pizza joint is closing up for the night. There were three of us, me, my friend Pat, and my friend Jack. We finish our food, refill our drinks, and head out. To get back to my house, we had to cross this large mall parking lot that's about 4 football fields long and 2 wide. I should mention at this point that we aren't dumb, naive kids. We all had grown up in the city and had our fair share of urban experiences. All three of us were pretty streetwise and were competent out on the street by ourselves, but we experienced something this night that we were totally unprepared for. So we're walking through this parking lot and it's absolutely desolate. Not a soul in sight. Suddenly we see a white tradesman van creeping slowly behind us about 100 yards back. I know the old white van cliché, but I swear it's a real story. I point it out to my friends and we pick up our pace. We pop the collars on our jackets and hunch out shoulders to make us seem a bit bigger than we are. In an instant, the van speeds up and cuts off our path. Everything in the van is pitch black, so we can't see any people. That's when someone calls out in a non-threatening voice, "Hey man, happy Halloween, you guys like Halloween?" Despite the jovial manner in which this was said, a van doesn't cut you off in a parking lot unless it has bad intentions. We had nowhere to go. We could run, but they're in a van. They would catch up to us easily, and we'd have to turn our backs to them. He says it again. "You guys like Halloween?" I respond, trying to sound tough. "Yeah, but it's over now, so we're heading home and you're in our way." "Nah, dude, Halloween ain't over. We still got tons of candy in here." The tone suddenly shifted and still, we couldn't see anyone in the van. The three of us puff out our chests and get ready for a fight. After a brief silence that felt like it dragged on for hours, Jack cuts the tension by sternly saying, "Listen, dickhead, I don't know what you think you're about to do, but if you don't leave, we're gonna kick your ass." Once he said that, the back door of the van swung open, and 2 very tall men stepped out. They had black suits with black leather gloves and were well-built and strong-looking. But the most menacing thing was that they were both wearing these cheap Mitt Romney masks. That's when we realized this wasn't a Halloween prank. At that moment, all three of us went to take off, but the van started driving circles around us. The van stopped, and it looked like they were about to make their move. This was it. I mentioned that there were 3 of us that night. It was at this moment that my other friend, Pat, the one who had stayed silent up to this point, leaned into both of us and quietly said, "This is a Hail Mary, but get ready to fucking run when I say go, all right?" He then picked up one of our sodas and threw it with all his might at the driver's side window. The window was open, and the cup miraculously connected with the driver's head. "Run!" Pat screamed, and we took off across the parking lot. The van squealed off in the other direction, and we hurried our asses home. Jack and I were both confused as to why a simple cup of soda got them to give up on their plans. Then we found out what actually happened. While we were panicking, Pat kept his cool. He nonchalantly dumped out his drink and slipped a big rock into his cup. Then he waited for the right moment. The driver, thinking that this kid had just thrown a drink at him, wound up getting pegged in the head with a rock. It probably knocked him out cold, or it at least bought us enough time to put some distance between us. All that was left after that was pulling off a miracle and getting the rock to hit. Maybe a guardian angel or God himself took care of that. I'm still amazed by it. On Halloween night, my parents had gone out to a costume party, leaving me alone in our old, creaky house. The wind outside howled, causing the windows to rattle. It was going to be a long night. I had planned to hand out candy to the few trick-or-treaters we usually got, but I had a nagging feeling that this Halloween was going to be different. I turned on the TV and tried to lose myself in a horror movie, but the eerie sounds from outside kept distracting me. The floorboards in the hallway groaned, making my skin crawl. I thought it was just the house settling, but then I heard a faint whisper, a voice I didn't recognize. It sent a shiver down my spine. As I got up to investigate, I noticed a soft glow coming from our neighbor's house, which had been abandoned for years. Kids in the neighborhood claimed it was haunted, and I couldn't blame them. The place looked sinister with its peeling paint and overgrown garden. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to check it out. I grabbed a flashlight and headed next door. The fence was easy to climb, and I cautiously approached the abandoned house. I could feel the chill in the air, even though it was a relatively warm Halloween night. I shone my flashlight through a broken window and gasped. Inside, I could see a group of kids in costumes, their faces painted with gruesome masks, sitting around a table. They seemed to be having a party, but how could that be? This place had been empty for ages. Before I could think any further, a sinister laugh echoed through the night. The partygoers turned to look at me, their eyes empty and soulless. I couldn't move, frozen in terror as they slowly rose from their chairs. Part of me wanted to run, to flee from that sinister place, but another part couldn't tear my eyes away from the nightmare unfolding in front of me. My heart raced as the costumed figures approached me with unsteady, disjointed movements. They looked more like marionettes manipulated by malevolent puppeteers than kids in Halloween costumes. Panic set in, and I stumbled backward, my flashlight trembling in my hand. "Who are you?" I managed to stammer, but they didn't respond. Instead, they continued their eerie advance, closing the distance between us. The one leading the group wore a clown mask with a grotesque grin, his eyes hidden in the shadows of the sinister face paint. Desperation overcame me, and I made a break for it. I ran from the abandoned house, my footsteps echoing in the darkened streets. The sinister laughter pursued me, haunting and spine-tingling. It felt as if the night itself was closing in on me, its darkness intent on swallowing me whole. Back in my own home, I locked all the doors and windows, my trembling fingers struggling with the locks. I felt safe behind the solid walls. But a disconcerting thought crept into my mind. I knew I couldn't stay hidden in my house forever. These entities, or whatever they were, knew where I lived, and I couldn't count on the safety of my home to protect me. An unsettling question gnawed at me. Why were those kids in the abandoned house? What did they want, and why was their laughter so malevolent? Halloween night had transformed from a night of harmless fun into something far more sinister. As the hours ticked away and my parents' return drew closer, I couldn't help but feel that something far more chilling was yet to come. With the night advancing and my parents still away, I decided to confront the unsettling events of that Halloween evening. I needed answers. Gathering my courage, I ventured back to the abandoned house, where the sinister laughter had originated. As I approached, a chilling wind whispered through the deserted street, ruffling the fallen leaves like a dark omen. The house loomed before me, its cracked windows and peeling paint seeming to judge me in silence. I cautiously entered, my flashlight cutting through the thick darkness. It revealed the same dilapidated rooms I'd explored earlier, but something was different. The silence was deafening, a stark contrast to the ominous laughter that had filled the air earlier. My heart pounding, I ascended the creaking stairs. My flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows on the decaying wallpaper. At the end of the narrow hallway, I reached a door that stood slightly ajar. As I pushed it open, a nauseating odor washed over me. The room was small, dimly lit by a feeble, flickering candle. Shadows danced on the walls as I saw what lay before me. The children I had encountered earlier stood in a circle, their costumes discarded on the floor. Their faces were smeared with a viscous, dark substance. The unsettling sight sent shivers down my spine. They didn't acknowledge my presence. Their eyes were vacant, their expressions devoid of emotion. In the center of their macabre circle was an open book with strange symbols I couldn't decipher. Its pages fluttered as if responding to some dark force. As I inched closer, the grotesque reality became apparent. This was no ordinary Halloween night. These kids, once innocent trick-or-treaters, had become conduits for something sinister. I stumbled back, my heart racing, and that's when the true horror revealed itself. The laughter I had heard earlier resurfaced, echoing through the room and growing louder with every passing second. The laughter was now a sinister chant, and as I turned to leave, the door slammed shut with a deafening finality. Panicking, I tried to wrench the door open, but it wouldn't budge. The chilling realization dawned on me. I was trapped in this nightmarish room. The room with the dark ritual, the possessed children, and the malevolent laughter. As their chant grew louder, I frantically searched for an escape, my flashlight dancing across the room. This Halloween night had indeed turned into a true nightmare, one from which I feared I might never awaken. And there in the inky darkness, I realized that my journey was far from over, and the secrets held by that abandoned house had only just begun to surface. This Halloween, beware of the darkness that lurks behind the masks and the chilling laughter that hides the unspeakable. It might just be more real than you could ever imagine. So this happened back when I was in 7th grade and I was trick-or-treating with one of my friends in his neighborhood. You should probably know that his neighborhood is divided up into 3 parts. The first part is what I used to call the normal part. This part is just like every other regular neighborhood. The houses are close together without long walking distances in between. The next part was what I called the big part, which was where all the larger houses were. Finally, there is the section that is very spaced out. In this part, there are a few houses here and there, but there are long distances between them. So my friend and I started out at the neighborhood Halloween party and then continued out to the normal part and then the big part. Everything went smoothly and was fairly normal. But then we decided to go to the area with the houses that were very spaced out. We already had a lot of candy, so we weren't planning on staying too long. We went to 2 or 3 houses and everyone was friendly and gave us candy as usual. But then we went to this one house that had all of its lights on and a bowl of candy outside. It's probably worth mentioning that my friend and I could see a few adults sitting and talking in the living room of the house or dining room, I don't really remember. Regardless, he and I ran up to the bowl and started shoveling as much candy as we could into our bags. We didn't stop until we heard footsteps in the house, then we booked it. We were just getting out of the driveway of the house when we heard a door open behind us. We started running down a small paved path nearby and then stopped to turn back and look to see if whoever came out of the house had followed us. We saw them in the driveway, walking around as if looking for something. He and I decided it was probably a good idea to go back. We assumed that no one would actually follow us down the path just to try to get candy back, so we assumed we were safe. This is the part where things get creepy. As we were walking down the path, my friend and I would occasionally turn around and go, "Oh, look at that, it must be the person from the house." And then we'd run for a few seconds until we got tired of the joke. Obviously, this was fairly normal behavior for a couple of 7th graders hanging out on Halloween night. However, there was one point when my friend turned around and then stopped. I stopped with him. Dude?" I said to him, wondering why we stopped and what he was looking at. "Look over there," he said. "Where?" I asked. He pointed a ways from where we came, a little off the path. "There," he said. "Does that look like a person to you?" I wasn't entirely sure, and I was about to answer when suddenly this humanoid figure started moving. Without warning, both of us took off at the same time and ran all the way back to the Halloween party we came from. Now, I would like to address the fact that this easily could not actually have been a person. It was dark out, and we could have been seeing things. After all, we had just been chased away from a house we were stealing candy from. I don't think it was the person whose candy bowl we robbed, because I don't know anyone who would react like that to a couple of kids taking too many pieces of candy. I also would like to say that even if it was a person, it could have been another trick-or-treater, or maybe an adult trying to catch up with their kid, but my friend and I weren't sure at the time, so we decided not to take any risks.